Real life.
Superpowers.
Hey everyone! In this special episode, we speak with Nadir Izrael, co-founder and CTO of Armis. Earlier this year, Armis was acquired by ServiceNow in a deal reported at roughly $7.75 billion, making it the fourth largest exit in Israeli history. But the thing that stayed with me most in this conversation is not the exit. It's the clarity with which he talks about what it takes to get there. He openly admits he's motivated by winning. Not money, not a grand cause, winning. In the way an athlete is motivated by winning. The challenge, the competition, the pursuit of excellence. But unlike a lot of people who talk about ambition, he seems equally committed to the other side of the deal. The responsibility, the accountability, the fact that more people, more customers, more investors, and more employees become part of every decision you make. Maybe that's why work-life balance barely exists in his version of the story. Winning matters a lot, but so does accountability. Because even while chasing extraordinary outcomes, he's constantly thinking about the people affected along the way, not just what it takes to win. What it takes to win without losing sight of the humans on the other side of the decisions. Enjoy your listen.
Real life.
Superpowers.
Up in the sky, it's a bird. It's a plane.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology.
It's alive!
Real life.
Superpowers.
Nadir, welcome to Real Life Superpowers.
Hey,
Thank you for having me.
You know, we've interviewed so many peak performers over the years, and it's still a rare occasion today because, Nadir, you're actually behind the fourth largest exit ever in the history of Israel.
Yeah, that's a crazy statistic, but yes.
Does it sink in? Like, are you aware of this status?
No, not really. I mean, I'm super proud of the achievement, and I'm super proud of the 1,000-ish people or so who, were part of Armis and part of the success. But it doesn't really sink in. You live every day throughout this, and you're kind of building the company. And sometimes I look at everyone, and it's only like once a year at like a company event or something that you fully grasp how many people, for instance, are there. Like in my mind, it's still like 50 to 100 people or something, and we're still doing our thing. But no, you don't really grasp something like that. But you are proud, so it's a weird discrepancy.
Are people like recognizing you? Do you feel like suddenly everything has changed?
Sometimes. I feel like over the years, Yevgeny, my co-founder, and my better half, and myself, I think that we've also been very involved in the industry, especially cybersecurity, but not only. So a lot of founders, entrepreneurs, people who are thinking of starting something, they eventually kind of come to talk to us or get to know us. I think people recognize the name Armis. Like when I'm wearing like an Armis shirt or putting on something Armis, like a lot more people recognize that brand than before. So that's pretty cool. And it's also pretty cool because you get to be in situations where, like at the airport, when everybody's unpacking their laptops or something on the conveyor, or someone will say like, "Oh, Armis, what do you do?" That I'm like, "I work there," but you don't have to actually get into details. So I don't know if personally recognizable as much as the brand is recognizable.
Wow. And do you like feel that this is something that is beyond your dreams? Like, you start a startup and what do you dream of?
That's a really good question. I think that, when we started Armis over a decade ago, the picture of success that we saw, that the industry saw, was like Adalom getting sold to Microsoft for $320 million. So I remember that Yevgeny told me 321. That's the bar. That's what we need. But I think that over the years, especially if you're an ambitious person, and we're definitely that, I think what happens is the bar keeps just going upwards and upwards in your mind. You start looking like you finished one playbook. Now you're sort of like, okay, now what? And you end up just going upwards and upwards in what your aspirations are. Even now, for instance, I can tell you that our aspirations in the new company that we're now under is to build the biggest cybersecurity platform in the world and just accelerate everything towards that. So If you're the ambitious type, I think that you constantly look upwards. But if you're asking me a decade ago if I thought that we were going to come even close to this, not at all. Like I wouldn't have dreamed even of this level of success of a company back then.
Yeah, it's sort of like the question in the Olympics. So, like 20 years ago, there was a world record, right? That could have been the world record for 20 years, but every year there's another world record. So, like the benchmarks are changing because you made it a reality. But the question is this. So, the first time you opened it, let's say like you're before opening this company and this dream, okay? What was the first benchmark? Like, you're like, okay, I'm going to have like one employee or like $5. What was the first one?
I think for me, the first benchmark is just to get going, like actually do something, raise some money, start like what I would call a real company, right? Like it's one of these like initial leaps where until you do it, you don't really know if you're able to do it. And usually for most people, that starts when they already have a little bit of a team or they're doing like a little bit of like founder dating in the beginning or things like that. But I think that to me, it's always been like up until you're a real company that raised a little bit of money and starting to work like a real company, you're just a bunch of guys who are like, I don't want to say playing make-believe, but definitely you feel like, okay, it's not yet that. You need to like sort of commit into it and really be at a place where now there's the accountability. Now you need to actually do stuff. Like there's this whole element behind that. So I'd say that that's the first benchmark, but it's also really common that because things take time until like from the time they were decided until they're like closed, for instance, during that time you've already progressed mentally into what the next phase is, so you don't end up usually recognizing those
Right.
benchmarks when they happen. You only recognize them in retrospect or kind of look back at some point.
But you're seeing something very interesting. So wait, the turning point for you is once you became, you were responsible for yourself, but that's not enough. Once you became responsible for someone else's money or other employees, you were playing because the risk over yourself wasn't large. But once you took accountability on other people, you felt like that was the moment that you started like actually having a company.
I think that's a much better way of putting it than I did, but yeah, I would say that. Like I would say that the responsibility plays a big part into this, and I think that as long as you're only playing with your own chips, I think that in a way it's not really a risk as much as it is an opportunity cost. But once you take on the responsibility for other people, for money, for accountability to certain goals, now you're playing with other chips too, and that I think changes a lot of the game.
Isn't that weird? I'll tell you why I'm saying that. Because you'd think an entrepreneur starts a company, okay? And then he does it for himself. But what you're actually telling me right now, that actually the entrepreneur opens it up and he only starts working when he has responsibility on others. It's still for himself. If I'm looking outwards, I'm saying, okay, Nadir, a lot of money, he has this great company and, but he opened it up and he's like, yeah, I want to make a lot of money and I'm doing it and I do it my way. And it's the exact opposite.
I think in a lot of ways, entrepreneur, like the notion of entrepreneurship is actually the lowest pole on the totem. Like at the end of the day, you're accountable for everything. Everyone can sort of eventually toss the ball to kind of a different level, and eventually you're stuck with all the balls anyway. And then the second part is I think that I'm sure a lot of people do this for financial reasons, and I'm definitely not opposed to money. It's not that I dislike money, but I will say that most successful entrepreneurs I know, they do it much more for the feeling of winning, of building something, the competitive, ambitious part of things. And I think it's really important because it takes you through a really, really, really difficult journey along the way. And part of it is because of people. Like you learn a lot of things about what it means to lead people and the responsibility that comes with that, all the way to the point where, I throughout the years of Armis, multiple different people, like quite a few, in fact, family, friends, people who were close to me came up to me and said, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And then I saw you and now I don't want to be an entrepreneur anymore. And I'm like, I'm like, okay, but I can see why. Like, I think that I can see why if you're not game for what this takes from you, then it's actually there are better ways to make money than go chase
But if you
something like
knew,
this.
but if you knew what it takes from you, okay, would you like in hindsight? Okay,
I would totally do it.
because there's something about the naive not knowing. That's the only reason you can dip in, right? Because if you told me, listen, dude, you're not gonna have a life. Okay, you're gonna work 24/7. You're responsible. You may lose a ton of money. Maybe you're at the bottom of the totem pole. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't sound sexy.
I will tell you that I would still absolutely do it. However, I will say that if I had done all of this and failed at it, that would suck. Like I would say that would be a terrible experience and might change my why?
Because
Because I
it's
think
failing in that moment. You know, quit. It's failure, right?
I would say that on the one hand, yes, it's a series of things. Like people can bounce back, companies can do crazy things, but I would say that ultimately there is such a thing as failing at entrepreneurship or at a company. Maybe not for you personally. Maybe you can just do another one after and succeed with that. Like you can repeat or do other things or learn from it. But there is such a thing as failing at a company, and I would say that. Uh, we're all like I think anyone who goes into this path or most people I know are just very competitive about it. Like I think that even with yourself, like um, you want to succeed and you hate losing, and I think that that's at the core of a lot of what drives you forward because it's also what gives you the drive and ambition to bounce back from things. Like I'm not going to fail. I'm going to take whatever setback that happened here right now, and I'm going to think on my feet real quick how to turn that into a success because I know that I am in a competitive situation. I really deeply care about it. If I didn't care about it, then it wouldn't have driven me or the company or Evgeny or anyone else to really succeed the way that we did.
But this is really fascinating because you're speaking in many ways as an athlete, right? And it seems like you're looking at this as if it's as if it's some sort of track towards a goal in a competitive sport. And I'm hearing it when you're talking about being competitive and that being the drive and about how that's the drive of others. And in a sense, it's almost as if you've gamified the landscape and mentally looking at it that way. And not once did I hear you talk about a cause? And it seems like, am I right to say that you were looking to compete and you were in some form of ideation process where you decided, okay, how do we win in this startup game, and not specifically how do we, all this, the startup world has a lot of, what's our vision? What's our mission? How are we going to make the world a better place? And I'm not hearing you speak, in such words.
First of all, I wish that I had this drive, especially as a kid, in athletics.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if you were an athlete as a child.
Me not, and I wish I was. Like that actually ties into the second thing I wanted to say, which is, you are talking to a Nadir, a version of Nadir that's been in this for a very long time, and aside from the fact that I think that me and Evgeny probably rubbed off on each other quite a bit from a characteristics and kind of character perspective. I will say that I don't know. I think a lot of the more naive approach to building a company, for instance, definitely existed more then. And I don't want to think that I'm jaded or cynical today, but definitely I think that the journey of the last decade amplified significantly these pieces versus a little bit more of the vision standpoint. And I'll give you a personal story that actually kind of ties into this. When I started my entrepreneurship journey, I was working at Google. I worked there for nearly 5 years after I finished studying. And I left to start this journey. And I didn't originally start this with Evgeny. In fact, I always joke that, entrepreneurs that come from like the technology units in intelligence, like the 8200s of the world, they separate into two groups. There's the groups that go directly into cyber, and then there's the anything but cyber group. I was squarely in the anything but cyber group, and it came from exactly this like vision of like, I want to do something that I, believe in, that's like bigger than life, something that I would be able to really make an impact and a dent. And there's like all of these cyber companies, all of these cyber founders, let's do something else. And for about a year, I tried to do things in the world of small business financing. This was like 2014. This was like the heyday of like Fundbox and Bluevine and like other companies like that. And after about a year, I really had sort of like a come to Jesus moment with myself of, okay, at the end of the day, if I'm distilling really, really what I want here, am I truly looking to disrupt the world of small business financing, or do I want to win? Like, what at the core is more important to me? And I can tell you that it was actually really difficult to me to admit that it was winning.
By the way, what is winning? Money?
No, that's the weird thing. Again, not that I'm opposed to money, and money is a factor in this, but and there is, by the way, there is a driver of wanting to be financially independent after growing up in a home that it was by no means was I ever lacking for food on the table, but it wasn't also a glamorous upbringing in Kiryat Ata. But I will say that there is a factor of that, of like financial independence and other things. There are like pragmatic things to this too. But I think winning or succeeding is more of a feeling of, I've done something that I can be proud of. Other people are proud of me for doing. I've managed to like push the limits in some sort of way, or do something that very, very few people can do. A lot of things that, to your point, very much resonate with athletes and how they think about. But this was I can articulate this way better today than what I felt at the time. At the time, I just felt like, okay, at the core, I want a feeling of success. I want a feeling of like, okay, I can do something. And then I told myself 10 years ago, it was a little bit more popular to talk this way, but I told myself, I'll be like Elon Musk. You know, he had to do PayPal before he went and did like SpaceX and Tesla and all these things. Like I'll think like that. That's kind of my rationalization for it. But with time, I think that it became really apparent to me that not only is cybersecurity obviously a very important mission, but also the very building of a company, the very act of not just creating, but also leading dozens, hundreds, eventually thousands of people down a journey and a path where, you know, you look back and you're like, 10 years ago, this was an idea on a couch, and now there's like thousands of families out there that are making a living off of whatever this is a crazy, crazy thing, and a huge source of pride. And I think it gives you a lot of perspective as to kind of where and what this looks like. Doesn't take away the competitive and winning piece of it, but does give you a lot of other things to sort of consider.
Nadir, so in this conversation, what's interesting is, like you said that you became competitive because you were inside the cybersecurity, but at the same time, you also said as an entrepreneur, you don't do it for the money. Okay, you usually have this self-worth, competitive. I want to achieve something. Okay, and you know, that's funny for me because that means before you were also, I don't want to say competitive, but you had something to prove, or you wanted control in your life, or so. What was the chip on the shoulder there before starting the company?
That's a really, really good question. I mean, I don't know, but I will say that I'm a big believer in that as not just a driver, but also a really, if channeled correctly, and if it's not toxic, it's a really positive trait in driving things forward in an effective way, both as an individual and as a company. As an example, one of our company values is to be number one. That's a statement, because I think it makes you think in terms of, it's not enough to just do something well. You need to do it extremely well. You need to do every aspect of it well, because you need to be number one. And you can't take any losses as a given. Like, you can't accept any kind of like a compromise on this. Now, a lot of people can take that statement in a lot of different ways. And there are, by the way, definitely ways to take this negatively. But I think that ultimately, when adjusted together with team and people aspects, together with other aspects that sort of unify a group and a team behind that, I think it's a extremely powerful message. Now, the chip on the shoulder part is an interesting one. I didn't know this will turn into a therapy session, but I will say that I think I think that even as a kid, I was always striving to excel and be the best that I can, both
Were
for
you?
myself as well as competitively. I was good. Like I think I did well.
Were you number one?
Sometimes, in some cases.
And was it a problem when you weren't?
Um,
Or the
I
opposite.
think
Maybe being number one, maybe you believe you can be number one if you commit.
I think first of all you learn to cope with both sides of it, because I think one of the things that you learn if you have been doing well in academics or things like that, if you were like a star pupil that always did well everywhere, you learn that there's a lot of situations where you get humbled later on, because there's always someone smarter, someone better, or someone that can do more than you. I remember a very, very specific moment where I started my pre-army course, and I met there, to this day, some of the smartest people I've ever met. And I remember the day one, I'm like still trying to get my bearings straight, and there's a bunch of kids who are like giving each other like these math riddles at lunchtime that I couldn't even comprehend what the riddle was, let alone like speak to some of the things that they're saying. And I was like, okay, I'm in the wrong place. Like, what's happening here? Like, this is like a very, very humbling experience. But I think that is an important step in adjusting in general to, first of all, understanding that obviously this situation will happen quite a bit. But secondly, that you learn to navigate and find like, okay, I might not be the best at everything, but I can be the best at a certain thing, or very, very close to that, in a way that maybe no one else can. And I think that finding that's a journey, and possibly something that changes also quite a bit over time. So you sort of learn to adapt to either part of this. But I don't know that it's exactly a chip on a shoulder as much as it is a drive to just be the best you can possibly be.
How did you end it on that course? Were you ranked there?
You don't get told the rankings, but I will say that I got a very, very good position in the army as a result.
Did you work harder?
I think I'm in general one of these people who are incredibly invested in their work, and so I'm a hard worker always. It almost doesn't matter what you put me to work towards and who I'm working for. If it's myself or someone else, I just go at it. And as a result, by the way, I think that this is something that only later in life did I realize that is actually a very, very good and useful leadership trait. I think that if you're the kind of person who no one in the company to this day can even think that they work harder than me, that's something that infuses the company with a lot of energy to excel and do these things. I think Yevgeny, by the way, same. I think that we both fall under that particular category, but it's crazy to see what it does to a company when everyone sort of sees that energy and that drive.
But that could also be criticized, these days, these past years. Work-life balance is a hot topic, and in a sense, are you maybe modeling a potential burnout?
I tell people flat out that if they're looking for work-life balance, this is not the company for them. There are other companies that are, and I'm not saying, by the way, this is the only way to do things. I know other founders who live a much more chill life than I do, and it works for them, and that's great. And maybe this is like ultimately a deficiency in the fact that I haven't found the way to do what I do at half the effort or more life balance than what I do. But
is this still the case? Like, now that you're behind this exit, are you still working just as hard?
You would be surprised. A lot of people in my life or in general are assuming that now that we've sold, it's like
cocktails on the beach.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of that perception. I am working just as hard, possibly even a tad bit more right now, because there's a little bit of like an initial adjustment and understanding and learning a lot, and like trying to see how we can be the best fit within the company. But I'll tell you that we came into ServiceNow, the acquirer, as not just a business unit, but a large-scale acquisition that is meant to be a security division within ServiceNow. And,
Wait, meaning walking away was not an option.
No. This is a core piece of their acquisition was that the entire company, including us, would come in and just fast track everything that we were doing before. Just like take advantage of everything the host company can do.
For how many years?
I don't think it's measured from their perspective in years. I mean, there's a bunch of financial incentive packages, but from their perspective, what they're, I think, hoping and what so far, honestly, we're seeing is like, come in and just blow up, like do what you were going to do before, but like crazy, like on steroids. And
so wait, there's no step in this journey where you now take a year off and go just, on a yacht, around the world?
There's a part of me that, that thinks about something like that and thinks, how awesome that could be, doing something like that. But I think I get way too much satisfaction and dopamine from doing everything that I do on a daily basis. And knowing that ultimately, and this kind of goes back to what Ronan said in the beginning, the whole part around you're not alone in this. You're bringing along to this journey thousands of other people who, like it or not, like whatever you do here in this situation right now, is going to affect their destiny and what they end up doing significantly. So I'd say that there's no part of this plan right now that has any of that. Maybe if at some point I do decide to leave in the future before opening another startup at some point, or which the energy is definitely still there. Maybe between that, I would take some time off.
What happens if you decide to leave?
So, me and Evgeny talk a lot about the fact that there are some people that we see sometimes in the industry who it's like people who don't give a fuck. Like, and there's something very magical about looking at someone like that, right? It's like, it's a lot of times you see and you're like, I wish I could not give a fuck like that in some way, shape, or form. But
no,
but
you
I
don't.
also, yeah, but the thing is, I do very much, and I think that if you care about what you do, about what you've built, about the people who are on the journey with you, that's not really like an option. I'm not saying like you're not indentured. You can definitely like go wherever, and there's very like valid and logical reasons to do this. But first of all, never, in my opinion, never in a kind of burn bridges by kind of way. But also, I think it's also a matter of just experience as an opportunity. I mean, at the end of the day, I've never been an executive at a large-scale company like this. This is a company of 30,000 people. I've never experienced something like this, and it's interesting. Now, maybe at some point it won't be interesting, or it would be just not great.
Yeah, you're like steep on the learning curve now.
Yes, and I think that it's very clear right now how if we kick ass, and so far, knock on wood, we've been doing really well within ServiceNow, but if we kick ass, not only is the company skyrocketing and is the impact felt, but also, like I said, it's elevating lots of other people who are on this journey. It's bringing on new people to this journey. It's something that I think creates a lot of satisfaction. And then, it's funny because in 5 years from now, let's say, I go and like, start something new or look at the world from whatever lens I'm looking at the time. Obviously, this is all incredible experience along the way. So it is, I think, ultimately a very, very fruitful partnership in that sense. And I want to add one really important thing, which is you do something like this. This is a huge bet for ServiceNow. They bought the company for $8 billion. That's a statement. Like, to put down cash like that as a statement. And I think that it creates that same measure of responsibility we talked about in the beginning, maybe even a lot more so, because it's not just like investors who, okay, they knew what they were doing or whatever. This is a company that told you exactly what they want to get out of this and then went and put down an enormous check to go and do this. You can do whatever you want technically, but I think it's I think there's a lot of responsibility here if you actually care about.
Your leader, I'll tell you, so like responsibility in English, there's the ability to be, to respond. Okay. It's the ability to be responsible. Okay. I'm hearing something that I'm saying. I think, so you're a natural leader, But one of the things that I'm hearing again and again is I'm not quite sure if you had to get up in the morning and be competitive and care about yourself, okay, I'm not sure if you would do it as much as you're doing it for other people, which makes you a great leader, right? And I think the more responsibility you take, and that's why people believe in you that much, that actually you become more responsible. So that's kind of, are you tricking? I'll ask it this way. As an entrepreneur, have you hacked yourself by, if you want to deliver, each time you take more responsibility to get off of the couch, okay, and be more innovative?
This is probably one of the most insightful things I've ever heard about myself, and you should be charging for this session. I'm just saying, like other people do. This is a really interesting take, which I have to sort of think about a little bit. But I would say that for me, people are definitely a huge driver. There's no question. I think that I take very seriously the trust that they have in me. And I think part of being a good leader is earning the respect of people, because especially Israelis, they don't follow hierarchy. They don't follow management layers. They follow respect. They follow people that they respect. First of all, they respect that they're smart and that they're leading them down the right path to their knowledge, but also someone who they know would do for them what they would do back, or they know they can respect basically the person and not just the title or anything like that. And that's something that to me is incredibly impactful. Like I think that I take this part extremely seriously. And there's also a part where I think that it's easier for me to take pride in what the group does versus things that I personally maybe do sometimes. And the part around using this to hack myself in this is I will tell you that I've not done this consciously for sure, but now you raise a really interesting point about how to create these like motivational cycles for yourself, especially when it's over very, very long stretches of time. Because, I mean, 10 years is not something that, despite the fact that people tell you to plan mentally for that, no one plans for 10 years. I've never done anything for 10 years before. So this is a really interesting mechanism to have developed, I think.
Getting out of your comfort zone, because that's why you're not on the beach, right? Because you're not getting better. You want to improve. So the only way you can get it is just take more responsibility.
Like $8 billion worth.
Well, that's the thing.
That's the money. But what he took is a commitment, right? On that side, he says, okay, I'll take your money, but here's this. So now they put their trust in me, and now I have to commit to something more important than myself, because a lot of people now, a lot of people are, the stock is on that. The employees are on that. There's the children, whatever kind of, thing, they believe in me, whatever, they put the trust. So he's the gratitude for having that, and the responsibility is the driver. That's why you're not on the beach, I'm guessing.
I would agree. It's by the way, it's not that life can't become more comfortable throughout the years. It can, but I will tell you that it's funny because I get asked something similar to this, but in different ways, which is how has life changed post something like this, or post any kind of like, I don't know, secondary event that happened before, things like that. And the answer is you get more comfortable, you get less afraid existentially, right? Like you're okay. You know that even if everything went to shit, you're going to be okay. Like that part, like there's a strong fear element that goes away to a large degree in the back of your mind. And you have also this knowledge that in a different, if I look at a different group, like my family, like my wife, like all of these, like they're going to be okay. And that part is a really important stress relief. And of course, everybody, has some sort of vice or something that they do as a result. But by and large, not a lot has changed over the course of the last 10 years. I still take calls all the way to like 1 or 2 a.m. on a pretty regular basis. Friday evenings, I try to keep them more clear these days than before, but they're still, pretty much what they always are. Americans really love their Fridays. And in a lot of ways, life hasn't changed that much. I still fly a lot. I still do all the things I did before from a work standpoint. And I don't think you can actually sustain that over the course of a decade if you don't, like secretly or not secretly, love that, like derive something very, very positive for yourself from it. Now, not all things that feel good are good for you. So maybe over time, this is something that I'll need to hack myself into a different thing. But now doesn't feel like the right time for that. I have so much energy, so much what to do and what to put out there, and so many people, to your point, that ultimately I think look up to us, look up to Yevgeny, look up to the leadership of the company to really kind of guide them down a path that now is not that time. Now is not the time to go sit on a beach. It's the time to kick ass and move forward.
So how do you navigate the stress and fear to let people down? I mean, there's so many people that are dependent on you.
Yeah, and I think that there's not really an easy way or easy answer for that. I think first of all, when I started off, I remember that looking at companies that already raised like their round B or round C and have like 100 people or something, and I remember looking at them and being so envious. I'm like, God, if I was there, I wouldn't have all this like stress and things that I have. Like, and every time I spoke to someone who's been there, they always said the same thing, which is, more people, more worries, more money, more worries. Like, don't think that this goes down. And they were very right. I will tell you that it doesn't actually at any point go away. I joke that I'm still waiting for that point in time where everything is supposed to become easy. Like I keep thinking in my brain that at some point companies kind of run themselves, right? Like that something should happen. But I think it ties back into, what are you trying to do with the company? If you're growing the company aggressively, which is what most startups do, but especially most ambitious founders do, then you're constantly putting the company outside of its comfort zone. You're constantly forcing it to do things that it wasn't naturally prone to do before. And when you do that, then things break all the time, and you're constantly in a situation where you need to pick up the slack and do what you're doing. So the stress and everything doesn't actually go away. You just learn to cope with it better. You learn to for instance, just accept the fact that you're going to make a ton of mistakes all the time, and that's your job, that's your responsibility. No one's going to take that for you, and you're going to make those mistakes, and then you're going to have to live with that, and hopefully pick up on them fast enough to course correct as soon as you possibly can, and still own the responsibility for that. But I think if you look at it a little bit that way, and you look at it from a perspective of, I am at this role. Maybe I'm not even the best I could possibly, the best choice for this role, but I am at this role. I need to take that responsibility. I take it for everyone else too. And part of that, though, is understanding that, I'm going to make mistakes all the time, but the fact that people are still following and still going after me or, my co-founder or our leadership team is a sign of, acceptance, or a sign of like belief in what we're doing. And I think you find that you cope with a certain balance around that at some point. At least for me, I'm saying, like, at least for...
Okay. I'm just wondering, are you able to still keep an aggressive growth rate when, you're now part of a huge organization? By the way, Armis is already quite huge in itself, but now you're part of a mega enterprise, and, you have to align with their processes and procedures. So are you still able, that has to somehow slow you down?
If I understand correctly, they're more aggressive. They want more, actually, not less.
Yeah. I joke, like, people ask me this about Yevgeny too. They ask me, like, how is he going to adjust to, like, the corporate life and structure of things? And I'm like, you don't understand. I don't know how ServiceNow is going to adapt to Yevgeny. It's the other way around. I already see this. Like, I think that we came in strong, the way that we know how to do things. And I think that as long as you're successful, and the company that is basically hosting, I guess, us, looks at it from a perspective of, if I get out of their way and they keep doing amazing things, then I'll just let them run like this.
That's the sentiment?
That's the feeling, I'd say, a month in. We're a month and a half in now. I would say that that's the feeling right now, but it's anchored in being successful. And I'll take this for a second before the acquisition. Let's talk about Armis pre-acquisition. Armis is a company that the last year before it got acquired, grew over 60% year over year. Now, that is best in class numbers for SaaS companies, pre-SaaS apocalypse companies, but generally cyber companies at the level that we're at, best in class. Now, I spoke about this openly with Evgeny that if we just let Armis be, it would grow at a slower pace. People would probably be a little bit more chill in how they operate, but we've consistently and always been pushing down on the accelerator pedal, like just redlining the engine all the way through. And when you do that, first of all, you're growing like crazy, great. But the second thing is things constantly break and you're constantly in need to fix.
Otherwise you get churn, like it doesn't help to grow because...
Exactly. But at the end of the day, if we weren't a 60% company, would we be even interesting? Would we be a company that anyone is even interested in? And I think that approach is the approach we're taking within ServiceNow as well. Like you're constantly in like a kind of like an all or nothing game. Like we can chill and do, okay for ourselves and just sort of nestle into the broader ServiceNow. But first of all, that's not what they brought us in to do. But secondly, would that be interesting for us? Would we find and derive satisfaction from that? Would the people that are part of this organization be as proud as they are to be in this organization if that's the organization as it is? So I think that part is at the heart of how we do things. And like I said, this is not the only way to do things. I know and value entrepreneurs who have a different perspective on this, but that's the way we know how to do things.
And why Google? Like, how did you end up going there after the Army? It seems like, with this mindset, you're supposed to be building something from, day one.
So I will say a couple of things about that. First of all, at the time I went there, this was like 2009. Google was like the best thing you could go do if you're like in tech. Like if you wanted to add like a really, really good line to your resume, Google was the place. These days, I mean, it's still obviously considered very good, but it's different. Like there's a different vibe in the industry. We're talking like 15 years ago now when I started there. So I went there because I felt that was like the best place I could go. I started during my school years at the Technion, so it was also convenient. But
did you plan to be an entrepreneur? Like was this
Yes.
Intentionally a step in the way, or? Okay.
I didn't know exactly when, but I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I have friends who still make fun of me to this day that I think I was in like third or fourth grade or something. I can barely remember this myself, but some of my friends remember this vividly. I was obsessing for weeks telling them that I have an idea for how to build a car that runs on water. And we went after school and started like sawing wood and stuff to like build a car. Like in retrospect, I can't believe anyone even agreed
because all cars are made of wood, of course.
Yes, exactly, and run on water. Now, and by the way, I can tell you that it broke my heart later on in life when I still had that fantasy in my head, and I went and I spoke to someone I knew who was a physicist, and I told him my idea, and he told me like, listen, it's a cute idea, but it would never work because it defies the laws of physics as we know them. And it broke my heart, I remember as a kid, but it did drive me to go and
you could have just call it a boat.
No, I will tell you that today I know a lot more about physics. I understand exactly why that wouldn't have worked, but I have other ideas, so it's okay.
Yeah, maybe for when Armis becomes boring and easy.
Yeah, which is never, it seems, but yes.
And how did you and Evgeny end up doing this together?
Evgeny is one of the most unique and good, ambitious people I've ever met in my life. We knew each other. We got to know each other a little bit in the Army. Like we worked from two units on the same project that won the Israeli Defense Prize at the time, but we barely knew each other. Like we worked on it, we knew of each other, but we really didn't know each other much. When I went to the Technion, I went to like this excellence program, and he connected with me a year after and started asking me about the program and whatever. And before I knew it, he's like, okay, he's also studying at the Technion, same program with me. And we got to know each other at the Technion really well. And to his credit, to this day, I give this story. 2 weeks in, he tells me, we're going to start a company one day together. And I was like, yeah, right, dude. Whatever. Jokes on me. This was 14 or 15 years ago now that he said this. So yeah, it's a crazy journey. But I know him, like we really got to know each other there, and I got to know what an amazing guy he is. And I think that the relationship between us grew throughout this journey to be like I this is one of the closest relationships I've ever had in my life, and in a lot of ways it's closer than than marriage. It's a very, very tight forged by fire type relationship.
And but you were saying that he wasn't the first person that you started Armis with,
right? He was actually while I was at Google, he actually worked at Adalom. He was one of the first employees at Adalom.
Oh, that's hence the 321.
Exactly. And when I left Google and started working on things, he was still at Adalom. When he left Adalom, that's when he reached out, and I had a little bit of a dilemma of what to do. And I think that's where a lot of okay, what are my priorities here? What do I want to do? And what does that kind of mean from a path perspective? That's kind of where all of that kicked in.
Interesting. And then, you were talking about how in that intersection in your life, you were thinking maybe I'll be the Elon Musk and I'll have to do the PayPal and then SpaceX. So
that's why he was working on the car.
Exactly.
No, but that doesn't work on the timeline. Like, what's your SpaceX? It's not, the SpaceX isn't happening?
Well, it's obviously not happening yet, but I will tell you that it seems like history is like catching up with my general thoughts and desires, because 20 years ago, what you could do with physics is, first of all, physics in general has been for the past 100 years, like just basically doing Albert Einstein's homework. Like he left us a bunch of homework and everybody's just doing that homework diligently. But now, the last few years, and especially the decade to come, is crazy. Like suddenly physics is like this entire new world of opportunities and things that are happening. And who knows? I mean, maybe the world will end up intersecting with things that are definitely of interest for me. Yeah,
I want to go down that path for a second, because this is, like everybody's interested in that, and I have to ask it. So, in my opinion, what's happening now is we're going back to the physical world, meaning the employees, which are AI, have to have servers, which are their houses, energy, which is their food, robots, and whatever, because they have to be physical. And what's interesting for me is cybersecurity. So on one hand, you're saying Israel is amazing at cybersecurity. But on the other hand, if we're going back to the physical world, then cybersecurity will be AI against AI. So is that like a big risk? Or how are we turning cybersecurity into something physical that is unbreachable?
Well, you mentioned a few different things here, but I can tell you that this is a topic that in my kind of professional hat, and especially what we do at Armis, is a huge area for us, a huge area of investment for us. First of all, the transition to AI versus AI is changing cybersecurity entirely. And I feel, I'm obviously biased, but I feel like we're at the forefront of that. But it definitely makes cybersecurity more important than it's ever been before. To your point, the more AI becomes physical, the more our world transforms into a place where AI isn't just a part of our cyberspace, but it's also part of our physical space. Cybersecurity is now also just security. It's also part of just the real world we inhabit. And I'd also add that we're living in a world that is fast becoming a place where humans are actually outnumbered by AI agents significantly, or will be outnumbered by AI agents significantly, which again means that if you're trying to create a safe, secure space for all of that to work and the world's economies and countries to keep on functioning, cybersecurity is probably one of the most important topics that they've ever been. Now, Israel happens to be a powerhouse in that for a lot of different reasons and for a long time. But I will say that I still think that there is too strong of a bias for that, which is a little bit shifting now. I think that there is more teams and more companies that are coming into the spaces of more AI in all of the different levels of it. And I think that that's an area that I hope we can drive much more through also companies like ServiceNow, as an example, drive much more into where is Israel on the AI map and not just in the security map, if that makes sense.
It does. It also sounds as if it becomes the next step in the sense that you're suddenly really protecting people, perhaps, like physically.
For sure, yes. There's already been, I think, multiple cases documented where machines that were compromised killed human beings. But
Really?
this is still, yeah, but this is still just the beginning. Like, I think that
Like it's much scarier.
I think we haven't fully seen the potential for what bad can really look like. I think that.
But wait, but on the bad side, okay, I just want to say that I think it's just the B2B side of cybersecurity is now the scariest part is any B2C, meaning any customer can be a cybersecurity company. And then the security is like this guy is alone in an apartment and he just hacks in because he has really good, AI skills and logic and prompts. And that's like everybody is a danger.
Yes, that is very true. And also everybody is at much more risk than they've been before. I think that, you can see this with simple things like scams, but you can also see this with more complex things of how people are basically what is the potential to compromise them. To this date, the reason why people haven't been as much of a target as companies is solely because it wasn't a financially interesting target as a company, right? Companies can pay more. There's more to do. There's more damage. There's more things. But I think that the cost of carrying out an attack is going so down, and the level of expertise you need is going so down that crazy things are happening in the world. There's criminal groups out there that only ever did things like drugs and like abducting people and things like that. But even they're realizing that it's much more lucrative to do cyber attacks because ransomware pays a lot of money and you don't actually need a lot of expertise anymore to do this. So you can just go do that. Like that's a really, that's a interesting criminal enterprise. So there's more groups than ever before that are actually carrying out attacks. And the cost to do this to a particular human is actually getting way lower, and the attack surface around that human is becoming much larger. So it's becoming a lot more viable than it has been before.
Basically, our life is becoming a bad episode of Black Mirror. But hey, thank God there's companies like Armis that maybe will save the world from Armageddon.
I certainly hope so.
What would you say your superpower is?
My superpower. I think I am, I have a lot of empathy for like seeing things from different perspectives. And as a result, I think I'm good at being able to take ideas or beginnings of ideas of people and being able to amplify them and just run with them and build them into something that I think is viable. And it's funny because on the one hand, I feel like I'm always dependent on someone to bring the spark of like an idea of something. But I feel like whenever I have a conversation with someone, like a lot of things sort of happen from that. But I think the empathy part is part of it because I think it's why, first of all, people come and talk to me in the first place or follow or anything like that. But it's also a part of being able to really place yourself in a different perspective and being able to see things from different perspectives. So I think that those are probably...
That's called tactical empathy.
Wow, great. See, you really should charge for this. I'm telling you, I'm getting.
Well, actually, I can't take credit on this. We actually interviewed an FBI negotiator.
Derek Gaunt.
So you're saying the difference between empathy and tactical empathy. So it's not feeling, but it's understanding a perspective.
Yes.
By the way, the spark wasn't yours for Armis?
Well, with Armis, what we did was we did something that at the time was considered very novel. We went and asked people, what they're feeling, like what are things that are broken in their world. And I say this because today it's much more common to do this, but I can tell you that at the time, this was like considered whoa, you just went and asked people? This is like, who does that? So the spark actually came from, I think, people who were just like presenting what their issue was. But I think that running with that, understanding how to build a platform that can truly do something unique in this and something that can learn and adapt and do everything it does today. Those are parts that I think the team in general, a lot of the people throughout the years sort of honed into what it is today. But I have to credit the spark to customers.
Okay, that's fair. And your kryptonite?
I think that the flip side of some of that empathy, and I've learned to cope with this over the years more, but I don't like when bad things, I guess, happen to people, but sometimes I'm the one who's essentially inflicting that. And it's, to this day, difficult for me, ultimately, when people don't have a good perception of me. Now, sometimes it's warranted. Sometimes, what can I say? I fucked up, or I did something that legitimately I can understand, their perspective. But I think that this ultimately does make me sometimes, I guess, pleased, but most of the time take on more of a burden, either emotional or otherwise, for other people. And that can be very, very taxing. I envy people who have a little bit more of a pragmatic view of the world like that. So I guess it's another perspective of the same empathy, but that's definitely, that can lead to just bad decision making and also lead to just carrying a burden that you don't really rationally have to carry. But that's something that definitely impacts me.
Because the baggage that you're taking actually is that you understand all perspectives, but at the end, as a leader, you have to make a decision. So
yes.
You understand that it's not in their perspective, but you have to make a decision. So you know that there's one person, at least, if not most people or part of them, that are not in that perspective, and you have to live with that.
Yes. And part of learning, by the way, to be a leader over the years is to part of the coping with that is realizing that you have a job to do, and you still have to make the right decisions, even if it makes you feel like shit. But also understand that this is a controllable aspect, or you need to at least exert some form of control over this aspect of things and kind of mitigate it. But to say that it goes away, or to say that it doesn't weigh on you, it definitely doesn't, and it definitely does.
Has the time shortened? Those windows where you feel down because you had to do something and it was just shitty. Do you now dwell on that less than you would before?
Ironically, I think my coping mechanism is a little bit the reverse. I have I don't know if it's a reverse. It's something of that. I have a sort of like a weekly ritual. This is like a literal reminder in my calendar, but it used to be shorter. Now it takes a little bit of time, but this is a list of names of people that it's not necessarily that I've wronged, but these types of interactions might have happened with. I call that list compassion. And the point of this isn't to, it's not about the situation itself or how I looked at that situation. It's about going through name by name and projecting that situation from their perspective entirely. Not right or wrong, not what should or should not have happened, but just remaining anchored for a second in that so that you don't lose that capacity to do that. And I think it's helpful and therapeutic because in a way, the fact that I do this once a week maybe means that I don't need to weigh on this the whole time, or I can sort of compartmentalize or kind of park this in my brain and just say okay, we'll let the emotion aspect of it maybe come out different. But that list has become fairly long. It takes a while to go through this mental exercise.
Oh, you keep making it longer? You don't just create a new list every week?
No.
You have people that you've wronged, in first grade there?
Yes.
Wow,
yes.
interesting.
Yes, I do. I do. It's an interesting cleansing ritual, I guess.
Maybe also make a list of the people that, you did good with.
Some people there, not only have I made good with, but things have I have a very, very good relationship with them today. And they're actually angry at me that they're in that list still. But my perspective, but my perspective is that the situation still stands. And believe it or not, every week when I go through this, I still get a couple of insights from this. I still like, even processing through scenarios that I've processed a million times, you now sometimes process them with different experiences in mind, with different life experience, different things that happen, like a different perspective about yourself. So I end up every week getting like an insight or two from this, from situations that, I might have like gone through hundreds of times in my head.
Fascinating, and I think it's so kind of you. But actually, what I meant is just maybe also create a separate list entirely of good things that you did for people. It probably would be longer, and maybe, it would balance that a little for you, but just a thought here.
It's one of these things where generally, I think for a lot of entrepreneurs I know, and me included, it's you spend much more time looking through failures and what to learn from them than you do going through success. So I think it's partially that as well.
But maybe there's something to learn from the good things as well, and to to preserve.
Yes.
So wow, Nadir, thank you so much for your time. You definitely seem like a genuine leader, an empathetic one, and we're really rooting for you and really proud of this national success. And we hope and wish for you to really achieve all your goals, and I'm curious to see when this becomes easy, and to maybe see what your next step would be.
Genuinely, continue to take responsibility. It's not trivial as leadership, and it's very. I'm very grateful for you for taking responsibility for people, and it's not trivial. And I hope people appreciate you in their world.
Well, I hope I continue to do good by them, and I appreciate this incredible therapy session. I have a lot of things to think about myself as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good luck. That's all for today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to our podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, if you have a moment, we would really appreciate it if you could rate and review our podcast on the platform you're listening to. This will help others find our show. And as always, if you know anyone who you think would enjoy our podcast, please share it with them. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back as usual on the 1st of the month.
Real life.
Superpowers.
Up in the sky, it's a bird. It's a plane.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him. We have the technology.
It's alive.
Real life.
Superpowers.